You saw the linear gradient in the last lecture. Let's comment it out. And let's add another background image, this time with the radial gradient function. The radial gradient function, as the name suggests, allows you to define a radial gradient. So not one that starts at one edge and goes to another one, but one that starts at a certain shape and then transitions to all the areas around it. Let's start with a simple gradient again, red, blue, because we can clearly see that. If we reload, this is our default radial gradient. It's positioned in the middle by default, and the shape is an ellipse. It's not a circle, it's an ellipse. And you see it starts with the first color and then transitions to the second color, which is all around it. Of course, here too, you can define multiple colors like green. And the shape will simply, well, be kept. And now we have a red ellipse going to a blue ellipse going to a green ellipse. This is how that works. Now, of course, you can also change the shape. For example, you can add a first argument that can be circle. That's the alternative, the only alternative you have to the ellipse. You can set it to be a circle instead of an ellipse. If you now reload and watch closely, you see it now indeed is a perfect circle, no longer an ellipse. Now, of course, you can also change the position where it should start. Right now it was always centered, but maybe you don't want that. You can add the at attribute here and say at top, for example. If you do that and you reload, now you see the center of the circle is right in the middle of the top. You can also say at top left to put it to the top left. Now the center of the circle is in the top left, and then the radial gradient starts from there. You can also enter custom values here. You could say 20%, 50%. If you do that, you actually see it's moved 20% from the left. So the circle of the innermost shape is 20% from the left and 50% from the top. So this is basically how you know it. First value is the x-axis, second value is the y-axis. Of course, you can also use pixels here. Now with that, we got the shape and we got the position. Now what's missing? The missing piece, of course, is the size. You can define the size by, for example, adding 20 pixels after a circle. If you do that and you reload, now you see the circle is very tiny because now, and that's important, the entire circle without the outermost part, so in this case the red and the blue area, have a total combined diameter of 20 pixels. So that's basically the width of this shape. Now this only works for the circle, for the ellipse. If you use that, which would be the default, this actually doesn't work because what would the 20 pixels be referring to? Of course, you could add 2 values here and reload. Now you again created a circle though. So you could add different values to turn this back to a non-circle. So with 2 values, you can also style the ellipse, give it a certain width and height, like that. First value is width, second value is height. But there also are some keywords in case you don't want to do it like that. You can also add something like farthest side. Now what does this do? Watch the current value and then reload. Now what this actually means, and you can barely see it, that the ending shape, and that simply means until it transitions to the outermost color, so in case of 2 colors after the first color, or in case after 3 colors as we have it here after the second color, that the ending shape, and you can barely see it, the outer rings of the blue color touch the farthest side, so the side furthest away from the center, from the position of the element. This barely touches this side. And on the other hand, you would have closest side to reduce the size. Now, the outermost circle of the blue color, and again, it's hard to see, but you can see there is still some non-perfect green part here. This touches the closest side. And it also considers top and bottom, by the way. And you can also not use the sides, but the corners. Closest corner, for example, ensures that the outermost ring touches the closest corner. And on the other hand, farthest corner allows you to control that it touches the farthest corner. So these are some great defaults you can use to control the size of your radial gradient. And that's actually all that's to it. What you can still do is you can define color stops, like blue after 70%. You can do that to change, well, where it should transition to green and so on. But besides that, it behaves like the linear gradient. You can define multiple colors, you can use hex codes, you can use color functions, and so on. And that is how you can use a radial gradient. Now, just as linear gradients, they are added as background images, and they can be stacked. Now let's dive into that stacking part in the next lecture.